Welcome to Discovering. At this time of year, you'd be hard-pressed to find a UP get-together that didn't include a stick of venison salami sliced up on the table. We'll visit my buddy Rick at the Smokehouse and make up a batch of venison salami and some jerky.
Things can go bad in a hurry. Got to stay here and watch it. His cousin Jerry said, "You want to smoke something?" He said, "You get a case of beer and you sit there and smoke meat. Don't go do nothing else."
Stick around, it's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forests thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Venison, pork, seasoning, and smoke. Individually, each conjures up its own thoughts of taste and uniqueness. But put all four together, add in some elbow grease and thyme, and you end up with a flavor sensation that has excited the taste buds of wild game eaters around many a camp table or Sunday afternoon football game. Salami, sausage, call it what you will. Add in some crackers and cheese, and you've got a combination that no afternoon shindig would be complete without. So when my friend Rick called and said him and his son Joe were going to be smoking a batch of sausage and jerky, I was there before he hung up the phone.
Today we're going to start the process of making venison sausage and a little later on some jerky. But first we got to cut up the pork butts here. Actually a pork shoulder. I like to use the shoulder. It seems easier to cut up. I like to cube this up. With the venison is dry, so we want to put a little more fat in there. Some of the bigger muscles here we'll use for jerky with the straighter grain, but there's this one like a round steak and it has a lot of tendons and stuff going in there, and we'll just cut that up for sausage. Well, we got a ratio here of 1:1, 19 pounds of pork and venison. We'll mix them together and then we mix the seasonings in. Most people just grind it first and mix it with a mixer, but we're going to do it a little different. This is a recipe I used for forever. I don't really measure anything, just put it in there, eh? Some people ask for the recipe and I said, well, here it is. I got tender quick in there, a little garlic, a little bit of cloves, black pepper. This is just cracked pepper, and some mustard seed. After we season it up here, we'll grind it up and fry a piece and try it. And if it needs something, we'll put it in there. I sometimes wonder if I put a little more of this or a little more of that, but sometimes too many spices is not good either. Then all you taste is spice. But you could grind the meat first and then put your seasonings in it and then use a mixer. For this sausage, I just think there's one more thing you gotta clean. We mix it up like this and run it through the grinder, ready to run it through the stuffer. We'll cover this up and leave it sit for overnight. 24 hours, whatever, get the seasonings to soak into the meat, and we'll run it through the grinder.
We usually put this in the freezer to stiffen it up a little bit, makes it easier to cut. And we normally go with the grain, just so it don't fall apart in the smokehouse when you're doing it. And depending on how you like it, you can cut as thick or as thin as you want. I like it a little bit thicker. This cut here is the hind quarter, longer pieces, and it's easier to manage when you're doing your jerky. Pieces of meat here, you get the fat, which is normal, but what you want to do is kind of fillet that off, because if you don't when you're smoking your meat and sitting there brining or whatever, you almost get like a rancid and rotten taste from the fat there. So you just want to kind of get as much as you can off, just get a good taste, I guess.
This jerky, I kind of do a recipe, one that we had found, I don't know, years ago. When I was a kid, I wanted to make some jerky, and so I told my dad I was going to make some jerky out of the flank, you know. He said, hell no. He said, get a good piece of meat. Like, take the hind quarter and make some. I was like, oh, all right. Well, I didn't really know. So that's where we started this. Tender quick in there. Garlic powder. 2 tablespoons. Same thing with the onion powder. We'll need a half a cup of soy sauce. Worcestershire sauce there. It's a little hot sauce stock that we make ourselves. This is a recipe from a friend of ours. He used to make his own hot sauce. Well, this is just a stock, which is a lot of peppers, a little vinegar, and a tablespoon of salt. And that'll stay good for a couple of years like that, just like that. Okay, now we're going to pour this in here. I like to have it so it's over the top of the meat, so I'm going to add a little water to that. We'll mix that around in there. Before this is done, but once a day, it's probably going to stay in here for 3-4 days. Like once a day, you got to move it around, overhaul it, they call it, so that every piece of meat gets the same amount of seasoning. We're going to get this out of the way for now. We'll leave it sit over here for a while. We want to get that in a temperature though to where it's just above freezing. If your meat's below freezing, it doesn't take on the brine. It doesn't take on the salt, the seasonings. You gotta have it probably anywhere from 34 to 38 degrees, somewhere around there. And that's about where it's the best for seasoning anyway. What
I'm gonna try is I'm gonna experiment a little bit here. I like to see how things come out. Sometimes they come out good, sometimes they don't. So hopefully this batch here comes out good. What we're gonna do is see if I can get some sweet and spicy jerky going. So get that in there. Jasper's maple syrup, 1/4 cup of that. Pepper stock, we used in the other one there. I'm gonna use a little bit more than he did. Put a little onion powder in there. This right here is some Insecure. We don't want too much of that in there, else it'll be so salty you can't eat it. And there we go. We'll just have to smoke and see how it comes out. Hopefully it comes out good.
Our meat's been sitting for a day or so, and as you can see, it's kind of dry. Won't go through the grinder easily that way. So we're going to add some ice water to this. And some recipes will even tell you to put ice water in it. But to make it a little more pliable, it goes through the grinder without having to push it through. It makes it easy to stuff it as well. It soaks up a lot of water. See how it slides through the grinder? You don't have to jam it down there with a stuffer. If you didn't add that water to it, you'd have to pack it down in there with that stuffer. So we'll grind a little bit, and then we'll fry a piece and try it. Make sure we got the right amount of seasoning to our taste anyway. If not, we'll add a little more. If it's good, we'll grind her all up and run her through the stuffer.
A little bit more salt, but not a lot.
Needs more salt. Well, we decided to put a little bit more garlic and a little seasoning salt. Now after the meat's all done coming out of the grinder here, I'm going to throw these crackers in there to help clean it out. It's easier for cleaning and putting it away. Okay, we're going to stuff these in these fibrous, or like a collagen casing. We've got to soak them in water to get them a little more flexible. So as the sausage goes in there, it'll expand a little bit, otherwise it'll just rip. You want to stuff it in there as much as you can without ripping it, so it don't all shrivel up when it's in the smokehouse. We'll soak these for 3 to 4 minutes. I'll put them in there and I'll just leave them in there till as I'm using them. Now we're going to fill the the stuffer here. This old stuffer from a buddy of mine. Found it at a flea market. I'm gonna pack this in there and try to get out as much air as we can. Get them as firm as possible without busting them. Now we gotta open this up a little bit, let that dry. That end will dry so that the string won't slip off when it's hanging in the smoker. These casings, being that they're pliable and wet now from the meat, the smoke does penetrate pretty good. I smoked these for probably 12 hours. It always seems to penetrate pretty well. I like these casings this length too, because they otherwise you hang them in the when they're hanging in the smokehouse. If the casing is too long, then the top part is cooked more than the bottom, unless you crawl in there and flip them upside down, which is not fun. The darker casings are they seem to be a little different consistency here. Yeah, these don't seem to stretch as much. I mean, these are almost rubbery. But there again, once you know, when we are stuffing it, they have a tendency to rip also. Done that before, trying to stuff them too tight. I like this old stuffer for this reason right here, the cleanup. You take it apart. Most of these stuffers are all built. This is all casted together, you know. So you got to take the whole thing and take it off and clean it. Where this one here, I like the pot comes right off of there. You throw it right in the sink and clean it. We're on our last leg of our sausage journey here. That's the smokehouse. We usually start a fire in the bottom, and it takes probably an hour or so to get going, but we're going to speed that up by getting some coals out of the boiler here. There's a nice bed of hardwood coals here, put in the bottom of the smokehouse. It actually serves two purposes. One, you get the fire going right away, and two, usually it's in the single digits or 20 degrees, and when you're putting jerky in the smoker, your hands are wet and it's usually cold and you're freezing. But once you get these coals in there, nice and warm. So now we're going to hang the sausage in there. Casings used to come about this long, and with the the way it works, I mean, the heat's all up here, and so we'd have to come in here and switch these around like this because they were so long. With all the heat, you know, it's cooking up here, not so much down here. But we figured out we get shorter casings, we don't have to do that. I like to knock the bark off of this, or at least the moss. This is hard maple, sugar maple. A lot of people use tag elder. I never did. A lot of people use apple wood. I don't want to have a real big fire to start off with. The smoke tends to get into the meat if it's cool. When you're cooking a steak, you sear the outside so the juices stay in. This is the same thing. You get it too hot, the smoke won't go in. You won't get a good smoke. We're going to close her up now. We're going to check it periodically. Temperature, how much smoke we got. We'll probably leave it in there for probably 12, 14 hours. We got to keep after it. Got to stay here and watch it. Things can go bad in a hurry. It gets too hot or whatever. I mean, I've had it happen before.
Well, this has been marinating for 2 days. Marinated all the way through.
You know, and this rack here is good for it if it's really cold out or if it's pouring rain out. It's easier to put it on in the house than standing out in the smoker. Right now the smokehouse has sausage in there, so we try to make it a little easier here without smoking us out. Yep. Turn that one sideways and put it way over. Pull it to you a little bit. Now we got to lay the rest of it on top of it. We're going to put this in for a couple hours, and then we're just going to keep checking it periodically to see how it's drying. We basically, I mean, we're smoking it, but we basically want to dry it. The smoke is just giving it a little different flavor. And when it's getting close, we want to check it about every 15 minutes because it can burn. It gets crunchy. It's like eating chalk. You don't want that. Stoke up this fire a little bit. We try to maintain at this point around 100, 125, but being that we were just in there a little bit, the temperature goes down a little bit. And when it's almost done, you know, we want to get up to around 160, 165, 170 for about a couple hours. Make sure it's cooked. Been in there 4 hours. And we just checked it a minute ago. And this stuff that's more open, I believe, is dry enough to be. Oh yeah, we're gonna bag this up, and then we'll check the rest of it. It's dry, but it's kind of flexible yet. That's the texture we were looking for right there. All right, let's pull this out and we'll check those ones that were a little bit closer together.
And they could use some more time, I think. You check one, see what you think.
All right. Well, some of this ain't quite done. It was too close together. Takes a little more to dry it out. Let's take a few of these pieces off here so it don't burn up on us. I think yours might be done there, Joe. But you can feel it gets kind of firm. It's not quite done yet. We're gonna put a little more wood on the fire and warm it up. And we'll come and check it in another half hour. And I'm believing it should be done.
You can tell the difference in the taste, for sure.
Oh yeah.
His is more of a sweet and spicy like you were trying to get.
Yeah.
I think you got it.
Really? Because I didn't want it, I can't tell the flavor I'm getting.
I didn't want it hot.
You'll get it. Temperature's good. Fire's good. This is our cool down method here. There being any snow, and it's raining out. We put them in this water here to cool them down so that they it stays nice and firm like this. Cools the fat down so it don't all shrivel up. And you can slap that cover back on. Okay, now for the taste test. Looks good.
Well, that's it for tonight. If you'd like to keep tabs on what's coming up on Discovering or see where we've been, you can join us on Facebook or go to 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Discovering.